Howdy soldiers! Welcome to part 2 of my two-part series about sex in YA. The video that I did last week talked about the over-sexualization of young adults in a young adult novel, and this week I'm going to tackle the myths that YA taught me about sex. And as a quick disclaimer, this video is going to talk a lot about sex. And maybe have words that rhyme with schmeus or flagina, so if you're not interested in that, you can just click away now and go explore the internet for more G-rated content. Not G-spot related content. No, oh my god, no, I can't say that. Click away now and go find other things on the internet, not get mad at me. As someone who has read YA for the majority of my life, I found as I was growing up, this is where I was getting a lot of my information from, be it consciously or subconsciously. I noticed that a lot of the information I was getting about sex and sexuality from these books are either lacking or wrong. And considering that the majority of sex education around the world in school sucks, this is a large part of where young adults are going to be getting their ideas of sex and sexuality from. As someone who writes YA, you have to understand that you have a very large audience of very impressionable people, and it's your responsibility to not disillusion them into thinking about sex as something that is scary or portraying it in a way that it's not. So I'm coming to you as like a big sister in this moment. Like, here's an adult who has had sex on multiple occasions, here to dispel some myths and maybe make everything a little bit less scary for when you decide, if you decide that you want to have sex in any way, shape, or form with whoever that you want. I also know that many religions and cultures have different ideas about sex and what counts as sex and what counts as appropriate for people of various ages to partake in. Totally get that. But since YA tends to be mostly heterosexual and the majority set in Western culture societies, I'm going to be focusing mainly on that today. And before I even start this video, let me just say that if you are someone that wants to have sex, if you don't want to have sex, if you are a hookup queen, it does not make you better or worse than anybody else. As long as everybody in the hypothetical situation is being safe and consensual, you do you. Let's talk about sex, baby. Let's talk about you and me. Myth number 1. Being a virgin is pure. Virginity is an old-fashioned patriarchal construct that allows people to judge and control women's bodies based on whether or not they have had sex, which is just straight up bullshit. Being a virgin does not make you better or worse than anybody else, okay? You're not special. However, because this is such an ingrained thing in our society, writers tend to use being a virgin as shorthand for making a character good. Like, how many times have you read about the sweet, innocent virgin and like the bad boy who's slept around and hooked up with half the school, but as soon as he lays eyes on her, he knows that she's the one, and then she opens her legs and there's literally like a ray of sunshine and innocence that just like attacks him and makes him pure again because of her amazing virgin powers. I don't friggin' know. Telling young people that they're better if they have not had sex at an age where you're going to start wondering about sex and maybe wanting to try it is really damaging and not something that should be told to teenagers. Plus, the idea of losing your virginity is a very strange construct. Like, those words in particular, like, you can't lose your virginity. It's not like car keys. You can't be like, oh man, I lost my car keys last week. Like, were they in the car? Did I leave them at the supermarket? Like, I don't know. You can't really say the same thing with virginity. You can't be like, ah, fuck, I lost my virginity again last week. Like, maybe it's in the car. I'll have to check the back seat. Plus, what does virginity mean nowadays? What about oral sex and anal sex? They have the word sex in there. They've been deemed as sexual acts. Do they not count? Are they not as much? Like, do they not count towards your virginity punch card? Like, what is they? What is they? What are they? English major. And that leads me on to my next point, and that is the myth that sex is sex. Now that we are more educated about what different people think about sex and how it works and what goes down, maybe literally, and we have a growing LGBTQ+ community that is building more knowledge about ideas of sexuality, that's great. But now we have to kind of rethink what sex is. Traditionally, when we think about sex, we think about a boy and a girl going into a back bedroom somewhere and having penetrative penis and vagina sex, and that is what sex is. But what if one of those partners doesn't have one of those pieces of genitalia? There's so much more to sexuality and sexual acts that don't necessarily have to do with the status quo. And while my whole point of the last video was that YA is a genre that you're not going to do graphic sex scenes in, at the same time, I don't think I've ever read about, you know, someone's mouth going lower than the collarbone or a hand going where it shouldn't be, you get me? Teenagers especially, or even just new couples. I feel like you don't jump into sex right away. You know, you're gonna experiment, you're gonna figure out what feels good for your new partner, you're gonna feel out what feels good together. Like, people don't just go up to someone and be like, hello, I would like to touch genitals, are you okay with that? And they're like, why yes, that sounds wonderful, I would enjoy that, let's go to a back bedroom and bone. And I know it's also kind of a thing to, you know, have your characters stare at each other longingly and build the tension, and suddenly they can't take it anymore and there's this outburst of passion that's supposed to be sexy and tension-filled. And like, I get it. But that's also really unrealistic. Myth number 3 has to sort of deal with both of those. I didn't quite know where to fit this one in, so it's going here. And that is the myth that if you're a virgin, you have no idea what sex is. Oh, me? I've never had sex, but what's a penis? Oh, I've never heard about porn before. What's that? Well, some people are grown up to be very sheltered and not get it. I can guarantee you that your child knows what sex is by the time they're like 8 or 9. Even if they say they don't, they know what it is. Plus, in a world full of very easily Googleable things, it's pretty impossible to not have heard something about what sex is, especially by the time that you're a teenager. Like, come on. Maybe this is just me as like a nervous, introverted book person, but when I started thinking about that, I was like, I'm gonna do all the research I possibly can. So like, I learned everything that has to do with bodies and anatomy and sex and like different kinds of connections people can have. And I learned all that before I ever even had sex. So considering that all these characters are written as super innocent and like blush at everything and have no idea about their own anatomy is just, it's wrong, okay? It's just straight out wrong. And if you don't know anything, you can totally just Google something or like put a mirror down there. I don't know what you want to do. Now that's what I call hands-on learning. Like, I've also never hotwired a car, but I've read enough books where characters did that I probably could if I wanted to. It has to do with like stripping wires and like putting stuff together and like you read the edge at the same time. Just because I've never stolen a car before doesn't mean that I could hypothetically do it in the right situation. What even is this metaphor? The next myth is maybe the one that I'm most frustrated with, and it's because it's a little gory, but true, and that is the myth that you bleed the first time you have sex if you're a woman. To start off with, can we first get this out of the way? The hymen is a fucking myth. Get this in your head. The hymen is just a stretchy bit of skin that is around the opening of the vagina. It can certainly stretch during sex, but it does not have to rip or break or tear for someone to have sex with you. And sure, sometimes it's the first time that you're having sex, you might in fact bleed because, you know, maybe you've never stuck anything up there before, like maybe you never used tampons and suddenly your body's like, oh, what the hell is this? Or maybe you weren't turned on enough and there was some chafing and like, ooh, But even if you do bleed, it's only gonna be a little bit. Like, these books have you thinking that it's just gonna be this like gushing bloodbath, like you just got stabbed and you're bleeding out. I mean, I guess you kind of just get stabbed. The first time that I ever had sex like that, I didn't bleed at all. It didn't even hurt. So yes, it might happen a little bit, but definitely not to the degree and frequency that all these books have you thinking it's going to be. Also, if you're having sex and it hurts, stop having sex, okay? It's not meant to hurt. That's a bad sign. Just stop for a second, reassess, see what's going on, see if everything's okay, continue if you want to, but just know that like sex is supposed to be fun and it's supposed to feel good. It's not supposed to feel bad. It's not supposed to hurt. And the last myth is not necessarily a myth, but it's something that is equally as elusive in a young adult category, and that is any kind of talk about contraception. When you start having sex, you can't just start willy-nilly having sex with everybody. No, you need to protect yourself, whether that's with a birth control pill, whether it's with a coil, whether it's with a dam or a condom. And yes, I understand these books are aimed at teenagers, and a lot of teenagers are not having sex, but I still feel like you could possibly go on birth control for things that are not sex, be it skin or cramps or any other kind of biological disorder. And I also feel like condoms are kind of like the first thing that comes up when you talk about sex with anybody of almost any age. Like, we've all had the health class with the condom on the banana. But in all my years and all the books that I have read, I have never heard about a girl on birth control of any kind. And I can name two books off the top of my head that had a condom in them. That's it. Not necessarily saying that every book has to be a sex education lesson to itself, but since a lot of YA books mirror YA life, especially contemporaries, that there would be some kind of mention about contraception just at all, even like an inkling, like in passing. But no, Nothing. You should not be protected from sex, you should be having protected sex. Please leave down below if you have any other thoughts or concerns or stories or just like good sex education advice. I hope my advice helped somebody out there, or even just opened your mind to thinking about it a different way, or opened a conversation. Being aware of your sexual health, especially when you start to have sex, is very important. Writers, you don't have to go into the literal ins and outs of a sex scene, especially considering that young adult is, you know, for a younger audience, and you have to consider things like age appropriateness and type of knowledge that they're already gonna have. Sex is not always appropriate for a young audience, but you still have to consider the medium that you're writing in and the audience you're writing for. You certainly don't have to scare people away from sexuality, because sex is normal and natural, and I'm assuming that people are going to want to have it. I think everybody should be somewhat knowledgeable about their own bodies and sexuality in general, even if that's something that you're not interested in. Also, gold star for you if you made it this entire video about me talking about sex, because I'm pretty open about the topic, I like to say, but I know some people aren't, so thanks for sticking around. You know where to click to like the video, you know where to click to subscribe. There's also a notification bell down there, so if you feel so inclined, because consent is sexy and free will is good. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!